why. In this episode, we are going to break down sexual desires, where they come from, why we have them, and how to navigate the wildly different desires that men and women have in, yes, such a way that we both get what we want, to have that happy ending and that happily ever after. In order to have this conversation, Harvard research fellow and mathematical neuroscientist Dr. Ogi Ogas is here for what I would really consider to be one of the most pivotal episodes we've had yet, you guys. Dr. Ogi studied thousands and thousands of search engines and pornography sites and more in order to really understand what it is that we as a human collective truly, secretly, actually desire, and why that is. He is also the author of the book, A Billion Wicked Thoughts, which, if you've been here a while, you know that I am in love with this book, obsessed with it. It is so full of information. So I am truly honored that Dr. Ogi is here on the podcast to hang out with us, you guys. Let's get some. Dr. Ogi Ogas, welcome to The Naked Connection. We're so excited to have you here today.
I am happy to be here.
I was thinking about how to start off this episode because I know we're going to have an incredible conversation. And I would wonder, let's say that someone finds this episode, they find the two of us here together right now. Why should they listen to what we're about to discuss?
Because you're going to learn more about human sexuality and human desire, the truth about it, the deep scientific reality of our sexual brains, our sexual nature on this show today. Because I and my co-researcher, Sai Gadam, another mathematical neuroscientist like myself, we did the world's biggest study into the sexual brain. And the research that we conducted, though we didn't know this at the time, will almost certainly never be duplicated again for a number of reasons that we can talk about on this show. So we managed to get, Dr. Gadam and I managed to get an incredible, massive haul of data about human sexuality, about the entire planet of human sexuality.
Yeah.
Data that will never be available in this manner again. So what we learned from this, this remarkable, enormous data set was transformative. And so if you're going to listen today, you're going to learn things about men's sexuality and women's sexuality, gay sexuality and straight sexuality that you may not have heard before.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved how this research, it truly is unlike anything else that was or will be. And perhaps you can share a little bit about why that is.
Yeah, that's a good place to start. So let me talk really briefly about what Dr. Gadam and I did, the source of our knowledge
Yeah.
and science and our research on human sexuality. So around the years 2008 to 2010 is when we embarked on this research. And we were just getting, we're both graduate students in Boston University studying the mathematics of the brain. So we had just learned all these tools for investigating the human brain. And we thought, what is some part of the brain that hasn't been studied that much that we can apply these new tools to? In our field, most people study things like language and memory and motor control. And we thought, okay, what's a part of the brain that people care about that is understudied? And we realized, oh, jackpot, sex. Nobody in our field is studying sexuality. And when we first pitched this to other neuroscientists, we talked to our colleagues, other faculty, other academics, 100% of them, every single person we talked to said, do not do this. You'll throw away your career. And here's the kicker. A whole bunch of them said too, and you won't find anything anyway. We said, we want to go online. There's all this new internet data about things people are doing. We can take this data, learn something. All of these neuroscientists said, you're not going to learn anything from looking at online porn. So this did not discourage us. This encouraged us. This made us think, wow, if everybody's scared to peek, maybe there's something there. Maybe we'll find some low-hanging fruit, and we certainly did. So what we did was we gathered all the online data about sexuality that we could. So we got searches. We got huge search data sets. We got all the searchers entered in an entire year in one search engine. We got America Online released, to their detriment, they released a whole bunch of private search data from America Online, which they thought they had anonymized, but they hadn't quite. So we used that too. We had information on credit card purchases of online porn. We had different adult websites shared their proprietary data with us. Pornhub was the biggest, but we also got smaller adult websites that shared their internal data. What were people doing on their sites? What were people looking at on their sites? We analyzed millions of erotic stories, including fan fiction stories. Of course, in general, women prefer stories and men prefer looking at things. This is a deep truth that we'll talk about more later. So, but we analyzed, we broke down stories. We broke down thousands of romance novels. The romance novel is probably the #1 erotic artifact for women in contemporary society. The porn video for men. We looked at sex-seeking ads on like Craigslist, people seeking other people for sex. We analyzed those. So we got all kinds of, we looked at the most popular, the traffic to different websites. There was different ways to analyze traffic. And what made what made the moment in time that we did our research so special, the window so special and irreplicable, is the following. There's two facts. The first was this: when we did our research, the online sexuality was going through a major transition. The business model by which pornographers were and people writing erotic stories were delivering their content was going through a tremendous pivotal change. In the early days of the internet, the dominant model for online erotica was a subscription model. You would pay a monthly fee, and for that monthly fee, you get all the porn of a particular genre. I still remember the very first subscription site I looked at formally as part of our research. It was Fart Fantasy. So this was men who are aroused by female flatulence, had ornate descriptions. Oh, Sally is going to squirt some of that wonderful love gas at Ernie, and boy, how he loves it. I still remember that, and I was like, wow, this is not going to be easy.
Yeah.
Studying this sort of stuff. But there was, at the time, that was a dominant business model. So you pay a monthly fee to Fart Fantasy. Every month you get new fart content. This was useful because we could see different websites had different specific interests, like fart, the smelling of fart, and we could see how popular, how much traffic was to each of these interests. But at the same time, a new kind of business model for online erotica was coming online, the tube model. And today, the tube sites have just dominate the planet. There's only a handful that have survived, and they've all become huge, colossal, multinational corporate entities. There's Pornhub and RedTube, and I think X Videos, X Hamster, places like that. There's a handful of companies that own all of the tube sites now, which brings us to the other reason our research was so unique and irreplicable, which was when we did our research, human beings were bringing their sexuality online from offline for the first time. So people's sexuality had developed in the real world with real people and with leather and with velvet and bed sheets and things like that. Smells, the smell of farts, for example, things in the real world influenced human sexuality. We brought all of that onto the internet. So when we did our research, there was amazing diversity of sexual interest. There were people, we listed hundreds of different sexual interests. You could find just about you could find literally any sexual interest somewhere online. There was one of the first sites we looked at was erotic falconry. There was people that like to get naked with hawks and eagles, and that was their erotic experience. So you'd find just about any wacky, I don't want to say wacky,
Yeah.
any judgmental term. You'd find highly diverse, unexpected, surprising erotic tastes across the board. This is no longer the case. Two huge forces have utterly changed the diversity of online erotica. The first is money, corporate demands. As I said, corporations have taken over the tube site. When we first did our research, there were tens of thousands of individual subscription sites on every kind of sexual taste under the sun. Today, the only subscription sites that have survived are vanilla, mainstream, conventional, familiar kinds of sex, your mainstream vanilla sex, women and guys in a very conventional sorts of things. That survived as the subscription sites, and we have the tube sites. But if you look at the tube sites, when we first did our research, there was incredible diversity of sexual tastes on the tube sites. No longer, it's almost all step parents and
Yeah.
step kids. Why? It's easy to film. You just film anybody and you label it step parents, and you're not going to get any trouble. What's happened is there's been a lot of social pressure on these tube sites, non-consensual sex, showing girls who are drunk. This is all staged, so it wasn't real. Girls pretending they're drunk, pretending to be raped, criminals coming into the house, a rape comment, those sorts of things gone. All kinds of things, in fact, are gone. There was a lot more transsexual sex. At the time, it was called shemale sex. I know that's very offensive. That's the term of art for it at the time. That's gone away heavily. You can still find it, but if you go onto the tube sites today, it's incredibly homogenous. You see all variations of the same old thing. Every country in the world now is getting homogenized. Human sexuality across the planet is becoming homogenized. We're becoming one big, happy, boring sexual family. There's a feeling like, oh, we're all talking about LGBT issues now. We're talking about trans issues. There's a lot more conversation about sexuality. True. But because of the social forces and the corporate forces, the entire planet is converging on a pudding of homogenous vanilla sexuality. The sexuality of our children and grandchildren will be strange to us. It will certainly very strange to our parents. The way we develop our sexuality, all online, we're all going to converge on the same general sexuality. So back to our research, we did our research at a moment in human history when we could see human sexuality in every country, men and women, gay and straight, across the planet, as it was emerging from the fields and the jungle, so to speak, the streets and the suburbs, so to speak, before these corporate and social forces got involved. And now it's hard to know what our sexuality is because there's all these forces holding it in place. So the data we had is amazing and wonderful and tells a story about our human sexuality that we can't get at anymore because we're fogged by all this homogenous porn that everybody's getting access to.
Yeah. Wow. It's really interesting to watch how it's transformed over the last 1 to 2 decades and looking at the data that you were able to gather. I guess the question that I had was kind of, are sexual desires and sexual cues innately born and then they evolve online through visual or books, erotica, or is it in a place where our sexual desires are being informed by the content that we're viewing or reading?
A great question, and one of the big questions we were trying to explore and tackle. And this
Yeah.
is, I think, the answer is that men and women's base sexual desires, what our sexual brains are designed to do, are quite different. This is one of this is probably the number one
Yeah.
biggest, most important finding from our research is that men's sexuality and women's sexuality are different, very different. Our desires are different. Male desires are men want to look at things and we're focused on objects. Anatomy, the most obvious. Male brains love breasts the most, butts number two, and a distant third, distant but very real third, feet. In every country, we look at every country, West, Muslim countries, Asian countries, European countries, South American countries. Every country, breasts number one, butts very strong, but number two, and then a gap, and then you get feet. Guy ankles you would find, waists, hips. Guys like looking at things. Women like stories and personalities and context. They like a relationship. They want to see people talking to each other, learning about each other. They want to see a seduction, something taking place over time. It's no coincidence that the number one artifact of female sexuality is a romance novel. You can spend hours in the story with these characters, seeing their romance and their sexuality develop over the course of a 300-page novel. Guys prefer a 60-second video clip that they can just put on repeat. Very different approaches to our core sexual behavior. And these desires, then, to answer your question, these basic desires, men want to look at stuff. women want to talk and have a relationship and be immersed in an emotional experience, we look for those things through the internet and we find them in different ways. So that's why these tube sites have evolved, mainly catering to men. There is a portion of women that do like visual erotica, and there's a portion of men that like textual erotic for sure. There's no one thing that's true is take an individual, any individual might have any sexual taste. So we're talking about the general planetary trends of men and women here. Take an individual, you don't know what they're going to like, but planetary trends. The guys, evolved these tube sites where it's just endless clips. You get like an encyclopedia of clips. You click on it, you can watch 30 seconds, click on the next one, watch 30 seconds. That is what appeals to the male brain. Women like fan fiction sites. Fan fiction sites, women write their own stories. Fan fiction isn't all erotica. There's stories about, Harry Potter finding a new wand, for example, but there's plenty of fan fiction has a long history of erotic stories, especially slash fiction. And so women go in there, and there's very elaborate fan fiction sites, story sites, with very rich communities. This is a big difference between women's sexuality and men's sexuality. Men look at porn, they want to be by themselves. They don't want to talk to other guys while they're doing it. They don't want to share. If you look at the comments section on porn sites, it's guys like, yeah, right on. Honey, you go to like a fan fiction site, women write essays about each other's stories. Well, I thought the way that Severus Snape was kissing Harry Potter, I thought he could have put a little more passion into it. But then again, he had a hurt child. They write on and on. Very different approaches on women's erotic site. They like to talk about what turns them on and compare experiences and compare things. So very different things that have evolved through the internet. The fan fiction community, fascinating. Women never had their own protected, safe, free community of being able to talk about erotica and sexuality. There's no history of that. Guys had plenty of places to go and do their erotic stuff. Women, not really. The internet gave birth to this fan fiction community. Did not exist. It sprung forth, almost fully formed in every country. It's the same in Saudi Arabia, in Brazil, in Japan, as in America. Women, young women, older women, women of all ages, like writing stories about the characters that turn them on, and imaginary scenarios that turn them on. And so, yes, we are. Our sexuality is driven by these biological desires. Women want to talk and learn and get into personality. Men want to look at stuff that drives us, but then it engages with the internet, and the internet gives us something. It used to give us subscription sites if you were guys. Now it's these tube sites. But it goes back and forth. There's people trying to make money, us trying to have an erotic experience, maybe trying to masturbate. All of this comes together. And what's happening over time is it's getting homogenous. It's just getting more the same.
Yeah. Well, and what I loved about your book was that not only did you share what the differences are, but you really broke down why and how that is. I remember reading about the feed and how that's indicative of, I think it was estrogen levels, and all of these findings had very like clear reasons why we like what we like, which I think is so fascinating. And when I was reading this and starting to understand, okay, so this is what men like, this is what women like. How is it that we ever end up together? How is it that we can take our differences and actually enjoy them? I don't know. I guess from your perspective of doing all of this research and having such a depth and understanding sexual desires, how do we come together in a way where we both get what we want?
Well, men like women and women like men. So that's how it usually works. The things that attract, arouse men are things that women have, and the things that arouse women are things that men have. So that usually works out that way. In our modern world, though, there are a lot of things that get in the way of this stuff. I have another book out too, The Sexy and Surrender. It addresses the fact that for lots of educated women, professional women, women with jobs, women with careers, and successful men, they often have sexual problem because the woman has trouble being aroused by the man, because women still want these old sorts of things that they've always wanted.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we want our men now to be respectful and generous and care about the kids and more balanced and not as masculine and macho and dominant. I mean, frankly, the word is dominant.
Yeah.
Women don't want their men to be as dominant socially and in a marriage and in a relationship as they used to be. We want to be equals and respected. But that does harm our natural sexual desire. So this causes a lot of conflict and problem. And this is kind of like the defining sexual problem of our era, is that if you want equality in your relationship, the sexuality might take a hit. You might struggle a little more.
Mm.
I mean, the thing about those old gender roles is that it made sex easier. I'm not at all advocating a return to that, not one
Yeah,
bit. Just
yeah.
saying we got to be realistic about it. You change something. Our sexuality was designed to work, over millions of years, and it worked fine when we were in caves and just had to hear each other's voice. The voice is very arousing. Where men are aroused by women's voice, women's are aroused by male voice. The belief being because probably we were in the dark most of the time when we were having erotic experiences, and so sound is very important. So we evolved all these things for a different lifestyle. Now it's great we have a modern lifestyle. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. Women are working and achieving terrific things, and we're all more integrated and inclusive, and it's all fantastic. But sex is a little more of a struggle. It's not as easy as it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is a really good point of like, because we're shifting the direction that we're going, how we engage in sex changes too. And I think that that might be indicative. I mean, I was reading statistics that in the last 12 months, I think only like 25% of young men have had sex at least once. Might have to check that. So it was something like really low, like not people are having less and less sex. And I'm wondering if it's because of some of the maybe the homogenization of what's unfolding here, and then also just how we're shifting the way we engage in the world. And if I remember correctly, I know some of the erotica that was actually moved in the direction of the men being a little more alpha, I guess, or beta, I suppose, in how that was arousing for women too. I don't know if you have any insight on that.
So that's a good point. So we looked at romance novels, thousands over generations. So we did it. So this was all the romance novels up to about 2008. And one thing you see immediately is that women like alphas. The heroes in romance novels are alphas. Millionaires, cowboys, knights, princes, doctors, kings. Now it's billionaire. Yeah, millionaire doesn't cut it anymore. And women's erotic fantasy life. You got to be a billionaire or nothing.
Yeah.
Millionaire. The
Yeah,
billion
yeah.
is all over you. When we published Billion Wicked Thoughts, we said we predict the big erotic artifact. There's going to be some novel that comes out about a billionaire boss that seduces some
Oh my gosh.
young, young impoverished young woman that's hired, some timid one, and does BDSM to unlock her. And then that's when 50 Shades of Grey came out the very next year after we made
Yeah.
that prediction. Because we said if you look at all the data,
Yeah.
this is going to hit women's hot spot the most.
Yeah.
This we predicted it, and there it came. But
Wow.
women
Yeah.
like alphas, it turns them on. I mean, this is always the crazy political struggle with Me Too, is that Me Too needs to happen. There's
Mhm.
men in abuse their positions of power, but women are aroused by them too. This is the conflict, the paradox that people don't like to talk about. Is like, one reason the men keep getting into this position is because women are aroused by them and like men who are dominant and strong and alphas. They're
Mhm.
aroused by it, even as consciously they could say, "Gosh, I don't want that dominant man screwing things up," but you feel the attraction. So it's all of
Yeah.
us in the problem in the
Yeah.
problems. You
Yeah,
know,
and I appreciate you sharing that because what the more I've been researching sexuality is that I feel like so often we forget that in so many ways we are animals in our own right, and so much of our desire, it seems, is driven in the need or the purpose to survive and to procreate. And it's like having a dominant, strong, powerful male to mate with is going to protect us and our children the most. It's like all of these survival primal instincts is in a lot of ways what's driving the choices that we're making. And like for men on the flip side of that, it's like the desire to be with someone young, the desire to be with someone that has all of these body parts that indicate fertility and health. And then we like make all of this mean something else other than we're just trying to have our species survive and protect
You hit
ourselves.
the nail on the head, Kirsten, that we evolved our sexual desires in an environment where, yes, women wanted strong, dominant men to protect them and their kids in a hostile, dangerous world, a
Yeah.
world with lions and tigers and bears around the corner. That strong, dominant men is what you wanted. And as you said, for women, for men, they wanted youth. The number one thing men are attracted to in every country of the world, no matter what the man's age is youth. Youth comes through uh, like a rocket flying flying out of the data.
Yeah.
Men like youth, and they like the fertile body parts. They like full breasts. They like full buttocks. They like things that are indicative, exactly like you said, of young, healthy, fertile children producing bodies. But the truth is, those no longer correlate with success. You do not need a strong, dominant man. In fact, in today's Western culture, that kind of behavior is probably going to lead to the opposite. Alpha men who dominate the people around them no longer fit into our society. I mean, this is a big source of some of the political clash in American culture right now between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans are one of the threads in their politics is reclaiming sort of a fallen masculinity. And it is true. They look at the liberal side, and there is a sense in which that old macho moral values are not just no longer valued, but denied. And there's truth in that. And so, and the same for women. Women can can be healthy and have kids much later than ever before. And those markers don't really correlate with having a successful life, a contributing life. Women are able to have long, healthy, productive lives, no matter what their body condition is or how they look or their age. It's just, so these things are just no longer true, but our bodies don't know that. Our bodies have millions of years of evolution to make us desire these things. And
Yeah.
this is why we're going, as a species, we're going through this conflict, that we want these caring, close, intimate, respectful, long-term relationships. But sex is an issue because the relationship, having these things in a relationship is not what our sexual brains are telling us we want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I wonder, are we supposed to marry these two brains together, or what do you think we're supposed to do about it?
Well, this is for each one of us to figure out on our own. There's no
Mm-hmm.
answer to apply to everyone, but we
Yeah.
all have to think about this. I mean, we all want sexual satisfaction, but you got to balance that with relationship. Having a long-term committed relationship, raising kids, all of these things. Everybody has to decide for themselves what they need, what they're willing to compromise on, what
Mm-hmm.
they're willing to live. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
not easy. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the challenge of life in the 21st century.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things I appreciated about your work was that you explored so many different avenues of sexual cues and sexual desire. And um, we all do want different things, and we all are turned on by what seems to be different things. So I'm curious of when you were exploring this space, if there was anything that a specific kink or desire that really surprised you the most or that you found the most interesting to research?
Well, as I said, the one that still stuck in my head the most was the very first one, Fart Fantasy.
Hmm.
That just set the stage for everything that was coming. I can tell you one part that was hard for me. I personally was well suited for this research because I have autism. And so, because I have autism, I'm able to focus on things and kind of put the emotion out of my mind. And so, I think I was able to look through, spend months and months and months staring at other people's pornography. I mean, you might think, oh, it's
Yeah.
fun to look at pornography, but I'm looking at pornography that wouldn't be things I'd ever look at on my own. I'm looking at other people's pornography day after day after day. Now, this, I think a lot of people would have trouble with it. I think this is why most people said, don't do this research because they could not imagine.
Mm.
But because of my autism, I think I was able to put that aside. However, I had my limits. And I
Yeah.
can tell you, so I was looking at gay porn. I was looking at lots and lots of gay porn, trying to understand what's different about gay male desire than straight male desire. The answer is nothing. Gay men and straight men have virtually identical sexuality. The only thing different is that gay men like to look at male bodies, and straight men like to look at women bodies. But the form and the expression, looking at anatomy, looking at youth, wanting it fast, and you don't need a lot of emotion, you don't need a lot of characterization, you don't need a lot of seduction. Um, uh, Gay men and straight men the same. But I was looking at a lot of gay porn to come to this conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And there just reached a point where suddenly it hit me. Like I felt, it's funny, it gave me insight into how a lot of women react to guys porn. I've talked to a lot of women, they're like, guys porn, it's so graphic. Do they have to show everything? And oh, it looks like they're hurting each other. That's how I felt looking all of a sudden at the gay porn. I was like, I can't take it. It's too graphic.
Yeah, yeah.
Are they hurting each other? This is too, like the reality that finally hit me, and I needed a break. It made me
Mhm.
depressed.
Wow.
It got to me. It was deep. I had been at it for like 6 months, but I finally reached a point where I was like, wow, if I see another penis go in another hairy butthole, I'm not
You're
going
like
to carry
anyway.
on. It's just too
Wow.
much. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I soldiered on in the end, but it definitely finally hit me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a be exploring for that length of time too is a lot for someone to take on. And I did find it really interesting. So you're saying that straight and gay men have the same fundamental sexual desires. And I know you did some really or explored some really interesting research about what potentially could be indicators or creators of our sexual identity rather. Um, and I guess I don't really know if I have a question about this, but from looking at gay versus straight pornography, was there anything else that you found that was different or that made it unique to the viewers?
So there's an interesting difference between gay men, straight men, and lesbians and straight women. So
Mm.
gay men and straight men's sexual behavior, sexual interest, sexual desire is the same. The only difference, as I said, is gay men prefer looking at male bodies. But if you put like the top five sexual interests of gay men and straight men on a list, they're the same. It's just
Mhm.
substitute, like looking at a penis instead of looking at boobs.
Mhm.
But gay men, like there's gay foot fetishists at about the same numbers as straight foot fetishists. Gay men like looking at butts with about the same prevalence as straight men like looking at lady butts, and then just gay men like penises. So straight men like looking at penises too. Let me get to that in a moment. Let
Yeah.
me first talk about the difference between straight women and lesbian women. There's a little more of a so straight women and lesbian women are also basically the same. There's a little more daylight between straight women and lesbians than between gay men and straight women, because, for one reason, as I mentioned, women's sexuality is very communal, social. Women like to talk with other women about their erotic tastes. And in fact, women's erotic tastes are even influenced. If all of your friends find a man attractive, you're much more likely to find that man attractive. This is not the case with guys. If a guy says, "Oh man, she's hot," you don't think she's hot, you're not going to be swayed in the least. You're like, "Wow, I
Huh.
don't know, it's like a dog." But women, they can be changed. If all their friends think somebody's hot, even if they first didn't think they were hot, by the end they can say, "Well, I can start to see why he's appeal." Women, there's a social effect too, and this plays out in the difference between lesbians and straight women. Straight women adult sites are more political than men's sites. So gay or straight, men do not like politics anywhere near their porn. You don't see political ads or
Hmm.
political mottos or slogans on any guy's porn site. They wouldn't stand for it. But on women's sites, it's not unusual to have some political thing. You might take a position on something going on in the world, or just some general political philosophy, or try to be a statement of inclusivity. Things like this matter on women's erotic sites. And lesbian sites go even further. Lesbian sites,
Mhm.
they have trigger warnings. Before they show a scene, they'll talk in great detail. All these models, they were all consensual, and they just, don't worry, none of this was non-consensual. And I know she's spanking, but don't worry, it's a happy spank, and she liked the spank, and she wanted this.
Hmm.
Lots of discussion and politics, and much more politics. And hey, after you finish, looking at these erotic things, go vote. You'll find that sort of
Huh.
thing in there too. So les lesbian erotica gets even more political and more social
Huh.
and more talksy than women's sexuality, straight women's sexuality, which is much more talksy and political than men's porn.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah, and if I and women also have similar kind of physical desires as well, if I'm remembering correctly, like the our desires also include broad chests and also nice butts. It was something like we should all be NFL scouts because we can indicate who has the most testosterone just based on who we're sexually turned on by. Um,
Yes, but it's interesting. Women can be aroused by the male physique, but
mhm,
it doesn't hold you the way it does. It doesn't
mhm,
hold women's
mhm,
imagination the
mhm,
way it does men's. Like
mhm.
lots of stories of women say going to a strip club where guy dancers, and in the moment with their friends they get turned on and they're excited and looking at the body, but then they leave and they're alone on the street and they're like, why was I getting so excited by this guy's butt? Like the women can come in and out of it in a way that for guys it's in our brains and we don't let go, and it's
Yeah.
throbbing and glowing and it's there, and men become obsessed, and women can feel it, but the feeling doesn't grip them. When it comes to body parts, it
Mhm.
doesn't grip them with the same intensity that it does the male brain.
Yeah. Yeah. It it's so wild to think about how different our brains, how similar they are, but yet how different they are at the same time. And is there a specific part of the brain that drives these differences, or what do you think that is?
So let me first say the if I had to say what is the most important, the most relevant findings from the broad sweep of our research into
Yeah.
sex, it would be first, men and women are completely different. Second, that gay men and straight men are the same, and lesbians and straight women are the same. But the third thing is there's only one sexual interest, one erotic desire that we all share, men and women, gay and straight, young and old. The one thing that we all are aroused by and interested in is domination and submission. Who's on top? Who's on bottom? Who's seducing who? Who's forcing who? Who's maybe forcefully seducing who? Who's resisting? Who's surrendering? Who's giving in? Who? These are you find in women's erotica. You find in fan fiction. You find in romance novels. You find in erotic stories. You find in men's video porn. You find in men's stories. You find in gay erotica, lesbian pornography. All of it. Who the power play, who's got the power, who's getting the power, who's trying to get the power. We're all aroused by that. That's the locus, the nexus where
Hmm.
all of us can jump in and enjoy it together and have some shared feelings. Even and for most of us, we can usually imagine some arousal both ways. Some people just they only want to be submissive. Some people only want to be dominant. But based on the data that we collected, looking at people's searches and things like that, usually most people have a preference for one or the other. They prefer to see scenes with the man dominant, for example, but maybe they want to see a scene with the man submissive. There's a very rich and elaborate erotic literature and videos and pictures for men being submissive. The CFNM, clothed female, naked male, very popular genre where the women are wearing clothes and there's a naked man and they usually like are laughing at his small size of his penis, for example. Very
Mm-hmm.
popular. Porn with guys, tied up in their balls, getting slapped around by
Hmm.
the ladies. But and women, there's dominatrixes. Some women,
Hmm.
not many, definitely a minority, but some women enjoy, being in charge, being on top, being on dominant. But most of us can imagine back and forth or have some erotic pleasure from imagining one position or the other in different circumstances. But that's the domination and submission, the power is where all of our sexual brains can come together to play.
Huh. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that we're so aroused by desire or dominance and submission?
I think it's as simple as in the mechanical act to copulate,
Mm,
one of the partners has to be the dominant role and one has to be the submissive. It's just the nature of the
mm,
physical, physical copulation of it. And you find in animals, animals are like, mammals, most female mammals are aroused by the alpha, the alpha bull, the alpha chimpanzee, the alpha gorilla, the alpha hippo,
Yeah.
the alpha walrus. All these, the ladies like the biggest, strongest of the men.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the men compete.
Huh.
All the walruses to compete to get to see gets the harem. All the old male lions compete to see who gets the harem. So this is across the whole animal kingdom. And like in the mouse brain, so the mouse brain is very well studied. We've identified there's particular circuitry in the male mouse brain that is dominant, makes him get on top, and it's called intromission. It's a particular dominant male position. So like we know there's a circuitry in the female mouse brain, there's circuitry for the submissive position during sex. So we can even identify those. And so our psychology, our erotic psychology of domination submission is clearly built upon this fundamental mechanical distinction.
Huh.
But
And
we
then,
both have it. Even in a male mouse brain, there's the female circuitry, and the female brain is the male circuitry. And if you put in the right enzymes and hormones, you can like flip them, and you can
yeah.
change it. So like in a male mouse brain, the female circuitry is usually off, but scientists can activate it to with giving it drugs, and then it engages in sex like the female. It's submissive in the act. So probably
Interesting.
probably something to do with these the neural circuitry for just these raw fundamental mechanical aspects of copulation that are also informing some of these psychological interests in domination and submission too.
Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting to consider that shifting the circuitry in the brain could alter your desire for whether you want to be more dominant or submissive and how you engage.
Yes.
You mentioned something a few moments ago that we actually didn't fully address, and that was penises and men's search for penises in porn, just how that unfolds in a really interesting way.
Yeah, let me talk about that. It's one of the more interesting things we discovered. So when we were doing our research, we quickly discovered that men really like looking for large penises. They're searching for big penises all the time, and it's very popular genres. And we knew that was out there before we did our research, but the numbers shocked us. It was not in the literature at all. There was no study of this, no mention of this. So we were like, what's going on? Why are guys so interested in large penises? And at first we were like, okay, is it just gay guys? No, it was clear as it was straight guy sites. I mean, there were sites targeting straight guys that were, big dicks with big boobs and big dicks, for example, would be such a site. But plenty of sites, overwhelming numbers of these sites clearly targeting straight males. What's going on? It was interesting. We asked gay men what they thought was going on with straight men being so interested in large phalluses. And here's where we learned a fundamental truth about human sexuality, is that we all project our own sexuality onto others. Deep down, secretly, we imagine that other healthy, normal people's sex is like whatever we have inside ourselves. So we asked gay men, why do you think straight men are looking at penises? And every single gay man we asked said, because secretly, even straight guys have a little bit of gayness inside. Every straight guy secretly harbors, some homosexual interest in his heart, is what every gay guy told us. But no, that was not the answer. We asked women, what do you think is going on with these straight guys? Every woman we asked said, oh, they're just comparing their body. They're checking out another guy's body and comparing it to their body to see. So I imagine lots of women do this, that women, check out, compare themselves. And that's what we were projecting. But no, that was not the answer either. So what is going on? The answer became clear when you actually looked at this porn. Whenever you look at big dick porn targeted at straight men, it's always big penises in front of a woman's face, and the screen is highlighting the woman's reaction. It's about reaction. It's about the emoticon of the woman's face. It's like a big cock with an emoticon. Yes. It might be surprised. It might be delighted. It might be scared. It might be shocked. It might be angry. I don't want to mess with something that big. But it's always some big emotional emoticon. So it's like giving an emotional context for the penis.
Oh,
We want to see how the woman reacts to the revelation. Here is the revelation of our junk. And what do you think about it, ladies? That
yeah.
is what the big dick. We want to see the big dick, and we want to see the woman emoting,
Hmm.
enraptured, surprised, delighted, whatever the case may be. That feeling is what activates uh, the male sexuality. And if you look at other primates, chimpanzees, baboons, we find all of our primate cousins are very interested in penises and are very active in penises. They display their penis. They spread their legs and show their junk. This is almost certainly the source of flashing. Flashing is so widespread in every culture in the world among men, and the men who do it are always like, I don't know why I do it. It's just this urge. I can't help it. It's because every primate's got this urge. You use your penis to show dominance. If you think a male's inferior, you show, your big, strong penis. I'm bigger, more powerful than you. To mark territory, if you see me doing this, this is my land, my penis, my flag, my penis flags is my land. So males of primates show their penises, and they're always checking out other penises for information. It's a source of knowledge and information. And the male primates are also monitor the females to see how they react to any penis that's displayed. Is she interested or not? How is she reacting? So this is stuff wired into our male primate brain that comes out, and it causes a lot of distress for guys. Some guys, we definitely talk to guys who are like, I don't know why I have to look at big penises, and I feel some shame and confusion. I don't think I'm gay, but why am I looking at big penises? No, guys, you can be completely straight and still be excited about looking at big penises. Don't worry, it doesn't mean you're gay.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so wild to understand what is captured within the basically the emoting of the woman that is a large portion of why this type of visual is so desirable. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, when you break it down like that, it makes more sense than wanting to just compare or having a little bit of gay in everybody. Yeah,
Yeah,
and what you just shared about having reactions to why do I look at what I look at? Like if someone's listening and they're a straight man and they're wondering why do I find myself searching for porn with big dicks in it? Does that mean I'm gay? Um, and I'm curious about that, about how,
if you're looking at big dicks and there's no ladies around, well, you might be gay. But if you're looking at big dicks and it's a big dick with the girl, and you
mhm,
want the girl to be the scene in which you're looking at, then yeah, then they're not gay.
yeah. Yeah, and actually this I was having a conversation with I think it was someone else earlier on the podcast, but talking about how we can go down these rabbit holes within pornography and find ourselves being really turned on and aroused by something that's disturbing. And then that can be a question of, either like what is wrong with me, or am I this type of sexual orientation or this sexual identity? And that can become really confusing. And is that something that you found in your research a lot, or?
Sure. On the woman's side, sort of a woman analogy to what I was describing about
Yeah.
looking at big dicks is certainly non-consensual sex,
Hmm.
rape.
Yeah.
Kind of famously, notoriously, I'd say, notoriously, romance novels, mainstream, conventional, best-selling romance novels, all the way up to the 90s, the early 90s, uh, usually had rape scenes. The hero, uh, there's a famous, the Flower and the Flame, very famous romance novel, sold millions of copies, probably tens of millions of copies, at least 10 million copies. The opening scene, the hero is a pirate and he rapes the heroine. And then over the course of the novel, the heroine learns to love the hero. Now, 21st century women, are understandably, justifiably shocked and appalled by this. And in the 90s, there was a big movement as women were like, we're writing these erotic stories, and yes, it turns us on, but we're telling women they should be aroused by this. So there was a lot of, like you said, confusion, struggling. I'm aroused by this thing. I know this is a terrible thing. I should not want to think about or be aroused by, but I am. What does it mean about me? Women too have very old evolutionary desires. They're built for a different culture, a different world, a different society. It does not exist at all around us, but we still have those urges, just like guys have an urge to look at other guys' penises. It's a primate urge. That's how old it is. Women have a similar urge too, to be taken, to be ravished, to want a man wants you so badly, that he's just got to have you. His desire for you, his passion for you,
Yeah.
so overwhelming, he'll break through anything to get at you. That resonates with women's sexual psyche, and it can be confusing and difficult and a struggle, and it still is. And this is something
Mm.
that women wrestle with in today's erotica, even fan fiction and slash fiction. There's always this tension. There's plenty of stories with non-consensual sex, but women are always trying to find creative ways to express this without having to face it. Here's two examples of how contemporary women have figured out how to indulge in this non-consensual fantasy without facing the difficult parts of it. One is by slash fiction. Slash fiction is male on male. So these are erotic stories featuring two male characters. The iconic example is Kirk Spock splash, Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock,
Oh.
probably love having sex. Harry Potter and Severus Snape is another, the professor, male professor Severus Snape, having sex. But when you have two males, women can have one rape the other, dominate the other, have non-consensual sex with the other, and it's not a woman who's the victim, it's a guy. So women have an easier time engaging in it, indulging in it, and it's two hot guys doing it too. So that seems to elevate the erotic experience. A very common way these days that authors have dealt with this is with paranormal romance.
Yeah.
So instead of having a pirate rape the heroine, you can have a vampire seduce the heroine. He can be thousands of years old and yet have the body of a teenager. He's immensely rich and powerful because he's acquired gold and jewels and wealth over hundreds of years. And then when he ravages a woman, he's got long teeth that he sinks into the neck and the blood comes out. It's often written in terms that are reminiscent of sexual juices coming out. He penetrated her with the teeth and the juices run through his mouth. So the scenes are written in a very erotic way, but it's not rape. Or a werewolf, another common one. Werewolf, the Twilight novels, you get both. You get
Yeah.
that word in Team. I forgot the werewolves. The other one,
Jacob.
Jacob, Team Jacob. Exactly. So you can have a wolf, a beast, an
Yeah.
animal, just
Yeah.
ravages the woman, but it's not quite rape. So you don't have to think about all those rapey things, but you can still enjoy the feeling of an alpha just taking you, ravishing you. He can't help himself.
Yeah. It's so interesting that we have, I do recall a while ago I was doing some research, and a rape fantasies is like one of the top fantasies that a majority of women have, and why that is and where it comes from. And I mean, it really seems like approaching our sexual desires without judgment, because there's so many physiological, biological, psychological reasons that propel us to want what we want. And it might not. So if someone's listening and they're like, why am I fantasizing about large penises, or why am I fantasizing about being raped? Like that can be kind of almost separated from how we engage socially in the world as well. And just, I don't know if it's accepting some of our sexual desires, but maybe just looking at them without so much judgment and understanding more where they're actually coming from.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. But
Yeah.
these urges and desires, when you don't understand them, they can make you feel shameful. They make you
Mhm.
feel bad about yourself. Embarrassed, thinking you're weird, not wanting to share them with anybody else,
Mhm.
confused by them. But these things are natural and widespread.
Yeah.
Widespread. I mean, that was the number one thing we wanted to do with Billion Wicked Thoughts. Is just to let people know, like, maybe you've got these interests, these desires, these urges, and you're troubled by them. Well, look how common they are.
Yeah.
Like the rape fantasies, widespread, universal. Every culture, every woman, Asian, South American, Muslim,
Hmm.
across the world. It doesn't have nothing to do with culture.
Yeah.
It's rooted in, as I mentioned, the fundamental mechanics of the act. The
Hmm.
female, whether it's human or rat or
Hmm.
fox or lion, uh, submits to the male in the dominant position. And so that there's circuitry in a
Hmm.
woman's brain for that submissive pose, and that's connecting with psychological circuitry too. It's
Yeah.
deep and ancient, millions of years old. You can't mess with it. It's going to give you these feelings that you don't know what they're from. It's no different than the urge to sneeze. Why do I have to sneeze? Well, it's deep, ancient
Yeah.
circuitry. I don't want to be messing with it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and I feel like I mean, we only touched on a few, but I mean, you talk about watching trans porn, watching group sex, cuckolding, like there's so many different things that you break down why we're a desire what we desire. And I just think it's really, really incredible work that you've done to showcase and really reveal why we like what we like. And yeah, being able to accept it and also enjoy it. And at the same time, I think you mentioned, that there's a lot of shame that comes from our desires and being able to remove some of that shame so we can have a better sex life and just life in general.
If we're just educated about the
Mhm.
truth of human sexuality, how it actually is, instead of how we wished it would be, if we just
Yeah.
accept how it is, then we can all be more accepting of each other and ourselves, especially ourselves.
Mm.
Just
Yeah.
what we try to do in Billion Wicked Thoughts is just show people here's the true diversity of human sexuality in the world. You'll
Hmm.
find yourself in here among millions of other people that share your
Yeah.
same interest, your same kink, your same squick, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just knowing this
Yeah.
is
This
immortal.
It's so funny that you're saying this because actually I had written down here, I pulled it up. I've written down a quote at the very end of your book that says, by identifying and understanding one another's sexual cues, we can develop greater comfort, confidence, and compassion. Only then will we be able to have an authentic opportunity to truly connect.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And
And I
and
just love
that's the
that.
key piece of it is a sexual experience is with another human being.
Hmm.
So being open to the fact that their sexual tastes might be different and the things they're looking for might be very different, but we are designed to fit together. There's always a way to make them work together. If you are open about what you like and you're attentive and accepting of other people like, you'll find a way. The hard
Hmm.
part is just being willing to be open and trusting about revealing
Hmm.
yourself.
Yeah.
We're designed to fit together. All these desires are designed to make us fit. So there's always a way to work it as long
Yeah.
as you remain open-minded.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I completely agree that no matter what we look like, who we are, how old we are, how large or small we are, that there is someone out there that will desire us and that will have the matching or maybe different desires. And then we have an opportunity to explore someone else's desires together. And that's, yeah.
Yeah, that's the joy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, is there anything?
The joy and power of our sexual brain is that it's unlimited
Mm,
ability to generate new ideas. Our sexual fantasies have no limits.
mm,
They're not narrow. They're constantly regenerated
yeah.
and renovated and refueled and reanimated. And that's what's so wonderful. It's like writing. It's like any art form. You're always going to create something new
Mm,
with it, and that's
mm.
the thing to embrace. Is that your sexuality is like an inner artist that's always wanting to paint something new.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, there's endless possibilities of where we can go within this part of our lives. Yeah. Well, is there anything that I haven't asked you or that we haven't talked about that you think would be really exciting to explore or touch on today?
No, if I would just say in summary that
Yeah.
our sexual brain endows us with all kinds of paradoxes. We talked about some, like guys, straight men want to look at other men's penises, even though they're heterosexual. Women
Mhm.
are aroused by the notions of non-consensual sex, even though they do not want non-consensual sex at all in
Mhm.
reality. Uh, Straight men are aroused by the thought of their partner with other men. This is cuckolding
Mhm.
is a very elaborate and popular erotic genre, even though most of these men do not want their wives to actually cheat on them, and that can be a source of confusion.
Mhm.
And the examples go on and on. When it comes to sexuality, our sexual brain makes us want things that we know are not in our best interest or are not going to give us what we want. And we have to wrestle with this, and it's not easy, but that's
Mhm.
exactly what it is to be a human and have this
Mhm.
generative, productive sexuality, this artistry of sexuality. It
Mhm.
also endows us with all kinds of paradoxes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful experience and existence we get to have, I think. Well, where can everyone find you if they want to continue to learn from you? I know definitely to check out A Billion Wicked Thoughts. You've written so many other books. Is there any other places or, yeah, where's the best place for people to learn more from you?
My website is ogiogas.com. And so all my books and information, and sometimes I post articles and blogs, and sometimes I post videos, all of that's available from ogiogas.com.
Okay, cool. Well, Dr. Ogi, thank you so much for coming on the show. It has been such a pleasure to connect with you today.
A great time talking with you, Kirsten.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of The Naked Connection. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode. Trust me on this, your sex life and that special someone in your life will thank you for it. And if you really love the show, please take a moment and leave a 5-star review or a written review and let me know what you think. It would mean so much to me and this show. Until next time, happy connecting.